Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. This is a fun episode because we haven't done a lot of these lately where
It's just the two of us.
You get the co-hosts, you get the dynamic duo, and we are fresh off a week of loving on each other in person in the Colorado mountains. So we've got a good vibe going on, and we thought that we would kind of do an expose episode, a health journey update for both Sophia and I, because we know you listeners are best friends with us too, and you're invested in our lives as we are invested in yours, and there's just things going on. And so this is kind of like a heart-to-heart episode, new things coming up, things that we've succeeded at or struggled with, and we're opening the doors. You're getting the behind the scenes.
It's sort of a nuanced conversation for both of us, because I have a recent fertility and women's health diagnosis, which we will go into. And Caitlin has been steadily losing weight over the past year, which I know is very interesting to most of us, because it's like how did you do it? And how are you consistently losing weight for a whole year versus any of us can lose weight for a month if we just don't eat that and do all this, but keeping it off and continually getting closer to your healthiest weight. And I have actually lost weight as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have lost, let's see. I don't even know. Where was I at? So I measure weight loss from when I was about 3 months postpartum, because you can't count that first period to be like, oh, I lost 50 pounds. Yeah, well, you birthed a baby. So
Right. Baby placenta, blood loss.
Yeah, but from about 3 months postpartum to now, I've lost 25, 30 pounds, I would say, in the past year, since my baby was about 6, 7 months old. And so we're going to just share our lives, weight loss, diagnoses. I'm going to tell you my weight loss is only because I did the things that Caitlin's been doing. So we're just gonna tell her story on that, because mine isn't different. And then and we're gonna tell my story about kind of the big reveal about what's been going on with my fertility health.
Yay. Okay, so before we do it, we're going to do a little connection corner. I've pulled up a review. We know this is your new favorite segment on the podcast because you love when we just read things about the podcast. I know that about you.
And you're listening right now and you don't even know it. We're about to read your words. This is you. I know you, it's actually you.
Literally yesterday, I did a one-on-one with someone that we had a whole conversation. It was great. I sent her an email follow-up on these are the things we went over. These are your goals. This is my recommendation. And she wrote back, she's like, oh my God, I forgot to tell you that you read one of my reviews of the podcast on Connection Corner, and it felt so special. And I was like, this hasn't happened yet. That's so exciting. And so anyway, This is a way for us to connect with you. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while and it's helped you, it's the best way that you can say thank you to us, because it helps other people find the podcast. So this is from MNM.
M. Night Shyamalan.
10 out of 10. So happy I stumbled across this podcast. It's been so informative, and I'm learning so much that I failed to learn in basic science courses. As a fellow registered dietitian, it helps me feel more equipped to help my own patients, and has been a blessing during my own fertility and pregnancy journey. I laugh out loud most episodes, and they are the epitome of speaking truth with grace. Thank you for your work, ladies.
Oh, that's such a sweet one. Thank you, MLM.
M&M, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign. Really, I mean, that makes me feel happy. It kind of is like what we're actually trying to do here. And coming from a fellow RD, that feels nice to hear that we're
It
doing
sure
it.
does. So
Okay,
thanks
well,
for
let's
that.
speak some more truth with grace, truth about our lives.
Yeah.
So, Sophia, your run up to being pregnant, and even in your first pregnancy, there were things going on with the anatomy of your uterus and a
Mm-hmm.
fibroid, which we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
that through symptoms impacted conception. An endometritis infection was something that you had to treat and deal with prior to conception. Like, what in between pregnancy with Natalie, where you had
That's my
early
oldest.
labor, your first pregnancy
Yeah.
with Natalie, your
Caitlin, you're
oldest
like,
child.
yeah, I know her name.
I'm like, did I say Jenny? Did I say it
You
wrong?
didn't.
I'm
I'm
thinking,
just
I'm like, no, I
adding a
didn't.
little more clarification for people that don't know my kids'
Okay.
names.
Okay.
That's all.
Hello. We're podcasting. Okay. So you had this huge fibroid. It helped to put you into this early labor situation that
It did.
required medication and all these things. What did you learn in between pregnancy with Natalie and Jenny that might be relevant to our listeners?
Well, not much, frankly, because my pregnancy with Jenny was a surprise. So, to kind of give you guys just the quick and dirty recap of what happened for new listeners who haven't listened to my fertility journey yet, if you want the whole story, go back, listen to that episode, but I'll give you like the quick recap, okay? So, when I first got my period as like a young lady, it was painful and I had some issues. And so I got put on birth control pills as a 12-year-old. And that caused me to bleed for like a whole month, just like spotting for like a whole month, which was very weird. And so I went to the doctor and they did an ultrasound on me. And I frankly couldn't tell you like what exactly was the problem that they found. I think it was just like a reaction to the hormones in birth control pills. But they were like, oh, and you have a fibroid. And I was like, what does that mean? And the ultrasound, the sonographer was like, it means you are a woman. They are so common and they are, a part of normal anatomy for most women. Yours is little. It's like the size of a grape. It's just, a part of you. And so I was like, okay, just like some people have earlobes that are attached. Some people don't. Some people have, extra wisdom teeth. It's just a part of a normal variation of human anatomy is what I thought. So fast forward to my first pregnancy. In my first trimester, unbeknownst to me, this fibroid grew extremely. It really, really, really got big. Got to the point where it was 11 centimeters, which is like a grapefruit. It was like bigger than my baby. It was so big. And then in my second trimester, this really happens kind of across the board with pregnancy. First trimester, your uterus grows. Second trimester, third trimester, it stretches. So second trimester, uterus is stretching. It's meant to do this. Your uterus has great elasticity. A fibroid, which is sort of like an abnormal growth, and mine was right inside the muscle tissue itself, doesn't stretch so well. So as the uterus was stretching, the fibroid sort of couldn't. And so the blood supply that was feeding the fibroid was like kind of being redirected, and the fibroid was kind of like dying. And it caused extreme pain, extreme cramping, which as someone who'd never been in labor before, I thought, is this contractions, but it felt much more like a Charlie horse in your calf in the middle of the night than it did actually now that I've birthed two babies and been through labor. It wasn't the same tightening feeling of a contraction. It was much more like a Charlie horse muscle spasm. So that sent me to the hospital. The doctor said, oh, you're having your baby now. She won't survive. Thankfully, they were wrong because it was just this fibroid was, being a diva, having a diva moment and stealing the show. My baby was in no danger. It was just a painful situation that was eventually helped with medication and some herbs and body work and things like that. So that's the quick story of what happened with the fibroid.
So When you go through pregnancy, you have Natalie.
Hmm.
You had recommendations given to you about the length of time between pregnancies, right?
I did. I had recommendations given to me that I should wait about 18 months to not between births, not like my baby was born, another baby born 18 months later, but between pregnancies. Like a baby's born and I don't get pregnant again until she's 18 months, just to reduce the risk of preterm labor, because that is sort of how this degenerating fibroid got categorized for me. But looking back, it really wasn't preterm labor. But, we were all sort of figuring things out still at that juncture. So it was recommended to me that I wait. And it was also recommended to me that I perhaps look into an embolization of this fibroid. Because my fibroid was so big when I was pregnant, in order to treat it, I would have to have a myomectomy. So myomectomy is where a surgeon goes in and cuts out the fibroid completely, sews your uterus up around the hole where the fibroid got removed, and takes this fibroid out of your body. And that's what you need to do. That's sort of the standard of care for fibroids that are like bigger than 5 centimeters. And mine was 11. So it was like massive.
Twice as big.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, more than twice as big as what is like the maximum size. So after I had this baby, though, I did a lot of like liver support, is what my herbalist recommended. I took these creepy herbs that were gross. And I think breastfeeding and just having my hormones be so low for so long really shrunk the fibroid, shrunk it down very, very small. And it went back to its pre-pregnancy size, I believe. I mean, I wasn't like having it routinely measured in between pregnancies. Um, so it was thought that if I was going to do anything about it, it would have to be the myomectomy. And if you've had a myomectomy, there really isn't a doctor around who would assist you in a vaginal birth. There really aren't licensed midwives who would want to assist you in a vaginal birth, because your risk of uterine rupture increases drastically. I mean, you've had a hole made in your uterus that got stitched together. And your uterus goes through extreme stretching and flexing and tensing, and it's a big deal to push a baby out. Your uterus works like as hard as it could possibly work to do that. And so I would either need to like free birth at home with no assistance at
No
all,
assistance, which would be
or I would
ludicrous.
need to have a C-section. And those were my choices if I were to have this myomectomy fibroid surgery. So I wanted more kids. I didn't want a C-section. And so I was sort of like undecided about what I was going to actually do about this. I was sort of like, well, I don't know. We weren't really, really trying for a baby. And it was recommended that I get things checked out, that I have a surgeon really review the situation and help me make decisions. Alas, when my oldest was just 1, it was just after her first birthday, my husband came home from a long work trip and bada bing, bada boom, pregnant with Jenny, my second baby, which was so surprising to us because our journey to getting pregnant the first time was long and needed medical help and was very, very deliberate. But what happened between the two pregnancies is I had put on weight. I wasn't training as much as I was. I had already, you go back, listen to my story, but I'd already dealt with a lot of the things. I'd had a polypectomy. I'd been treated for uterus inflammation. I'd been treated for infection. These things were no longer present in my body. And so pregnancy was able to occur in the wild much more easily because the things that needed to get dealt with had been dealt with. So I got pregnant.
And
go ahead.
So to make it very obvious,
Yeah.
You didn't have that 18-month in between pregnancies.
Did not. It was more like 13 months in between pregnancies.
And how did you handle that mentally at that point? Were you like, okay, game's on, let's go? Or were you like
No, I freaked
afraid and
out. I
concerned?
freaked out. I totally freaked out. I was so scared. When I saw the pregnancy test was positive, I was shocked. I was crying. I was obviously, there was a lot of my heart that was happy and, another baby, this is wonderful. But what I had been through with my first was so terrifying. And any of you that have lost a baby, you know how scary, or even have thought you might lose a baby. It is, you're almost like ready to make a deal with the devil. Like, what can I do to keep this baby? Anything. Like you are just desperate. And after going to that place and having more than a month of my life where every day I was wondering, is today the day where she's going to pass? And that was, really where I was at for a long time. I was like, oh my God, I can't do that again. That's so scary. And thankfully, my husband was like, this is a blessing and a joy. And, we'll see what happens as it happens, but we're not going to dig a grave today just because you got pregnant faster than we had hoped. And we've got every reason to believe that this is going to be healthy and joyful and wonderful. And it wasn't, the easiest pregnancy on the planet, but it was relatively uncomplicated compared to my first. And so I really hadn't made a decision about what I'm going to do with this fibroid. And at that point, the decision was made. I'm not doing anything about it between that and my next baby because my next baby is here. Occupado.
It
can't not open for renovations.
Right.
You can't renovate the condo when there's a tenant. You know what I mean?
So fast forward, you have this baby, you have a beautiful second birth, also podcasts people can listen to and stories available on this podcast.
Slightly complicated due to the fibroid. There were complications due to this fibroid.
Okay, so let's talk about that then.
Yeah. I did have a home birth and it was wonderful. The labor pattern was odd. It was very start and stop. It would, I'd be thrown. Anyone who, if you've birthed a baby, there's sort of the difference between like active labor and early labor. And early labor kind of starts and stops. Active labor, like once it's going, it rolls along. This was weird because I would be in active labor and then that would sort of stop and go away. And then I'd be back in sort of like early labor contractions again. And then it was very weird and went on for 53 hours and really scared me. And looking back, thank God I was having a home birth, because if I had been in the hospital, they would have like given me drugs to speed it along and broken my water. And, it would have been rough. It would have not ended well for me or my baby. But since I was home, my midwife was like, take a Benadryl and go to sleep. See if your contractions will stop. And they did for like 3 hours. And I got like a 3-hour nap in the middle of all of this, which is crazy and gave me like much more energy to move forward. And I say all of this because I just want you to know that there are options. And go back, listen to the whole birth story. But the main complication being that really wild labor pattern, that really intense back labor. I'm touching right where it was on my back when that happened. It was so strong. Even though the fibroid was on the right side, the pain in labor was so much on my left side, which maybe is because that's like the more functional muscle because it doesn't have the fibroid in it. But there's actually another, speaking of M. Night Shyamalan, there's going to be a twist surprise ending to this. So painful, so weird, such a weird labor pattern. And then when my baby was actually born, I had a hemorrhage. Unbeknownst to me, I'm just like holding my baby and don't care. But my midwives were like, drink these herbs, turn this way, breathe out this, doing all these things to me. And the hemorrhage was multifaceted, partly because my baby's cord was so short that when she was born, it really like pulled the placenta away from the uterus before all the blood vessels had shrunk. And secondly, my uterus wasn't able to then contract back together, this in a very efficient way, because there was this big mass fibroid preventing it from coming back together in a uniform way. So the hemorrhoid, I'm not the hemorrhoid, well, I mean, that happened too, but that's a different problem. The hemorrhage happened, and the fibroid was no help there. It was no help at all. And so after all of this, I was like, okay, if we're gonna pop another bun in this oven, we need to take the oven into the shop and really get a look at this, because by the grace of God and his mercies alone, I have had 2 healthy children and 2 healthy births, I would say, with some more dangerous, risky, whatever you want to call it, more components that needed to be managed. And I don't really want to roll the dice again. Not that I don't trust God, but, he gave us a brain and he expects us to take care of ourselves to the best of our ability. And I have the ability to seek wise counsel and go see a specialist about this. And so that's sort of where our plot thickens.
So, how did you hear about the particular specialist you are consulting?
So I am seeing a doctor, Dr. Spring Robinson, and you won't find her online. She hates social media, but she actually has a huge following. There have been people that made like a Facebook group that have either seen her or seen people at her practice. And through my group coaching and working with you listening here, I found this doctor in my area who happened to be in network with my insurance. Go figure, right? And so I was like, okay, I feel like I should, one, meet this gal, because I've had a handful of ladies go to her. She's the #1 endometriosis excision surgeon in Southern California, almost in all of California, but Dr. Cameron Neshat up in the Bay Area is also a big name, but she does a ton of endo excisions. She is a very skilled uterus surgeon. She's a OB, but she doesn't do, pregnancy. She doesn't do gynecological care. She pretty much just does surgeries for women with complicated uteruses, like what I've got going on. So I decided that before having another baby is even on the table, I'll go and check her out. If even just to meet her and shake her hand and ask her to come on this podcast and to, see what she's all about. And so I went to her and she was pretty cool. And I do want to have her on this podcast. And she did a very thorough evaluation of me, which revealed some things. I don't want to just give it away and blurt it all out before Caitlin can ask guided questions.
Before we ask any more questions, we're going to hear from our sponsors.
We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test or actually getting a medication or talking to someone who's actually an expert in fertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same-day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off.
We are back, and I am here with bated breath, even though I know some of the answers to this, but I'm on the edge of my seat. Just like you were on the edge of your seat in stirrups when she probably examined you.
She did examine me.
When she examined you, she felt things. She asked you questions. What type of questions did she ask you while she was examining you?
Well, before the examination, she asked me, like, what are we looking for? What are you wondering about? And full disclosure, after doing everything that I've done as a dietitian, as a fertility practitioner, as an advocate for women who are trying to conceive, I was really confident that I have endometriosis. And I wanted to be evaluated by her for this as well, because it's just been more and more clear to me over the last few years that I probably have this. And growing up, the girls I knew that had endometriosis were the ones that were like debilitated by their periods. They were like passing out in the hallways at school. They were like at home vomiting. They couldn't play sports. They couldn't go to class, and even as I grew up more, the gals I knew with endometriosis, they had problems conceiving. They had pregnancy complications. They had a lot of issues. And I didn't really fit into that. I mean, obviously I got put on birth control when I was 12 for painful periods and heavy bleeding, but I was always told, endometriosis is just not really something that's really talked about. And when I say the girls I knew with endometriosis, there's like 2 of them. Like, it wasn't like a grand population of my social circle. Right. And these people were just like kind of acquaintances, like I sat by her in chemistry class and she'd be gone for a few days here and there because her periods were just so bad. And that was that. So, as I matured as a practitioner and worked with more and more women and saw more and more and more of my patients getting endodiagnoses for fertility issues, I was like, I am pretty sure I have this. And I'm pretty sure I've just had to learn how to manage it at home. And endometriosis is very interesting because no 2 people experience it the same way. And the stage and severity also doesn't always translate to how painful your symptoms are. It just sort of depends on where it is. It's like having a pimple, right? Is having a pimple painful? I mean, it sort of painful. Like if you have one just on your cheek, yeah, just uncomfortable. Ever had a pimple right on your lip? Hell. Ever had one right on your eyelid? So painful. So depending on where it is, it can really impact your ability to live life comfortably. And that's sort of how endometriosis is. You can have extensive endometriosis, but it just isn't wrapped around nerves the same way it is for someone that maybe has not very extensive endometriosis, but it's just in a really bad place, or it's sticking together organs that are really need to be moving freely in order for you to live a comfortable life. So another thing about it is endometriosis is a progressive disease. If it is not treated, it will progress. And I believe the same thing about PCOS. I believe that, people that are like, oh my gosh, well, I used to be able to eat anything and do anything and I never had any issues. And now I'm in my 30s and I'm like growing hair from my chin and my periods are terrible and I've put on 40 pounds. Like, well, it's progressive. And so you probably, as you were a child who was like going to soccer practice every day, and it wasn't really that big of a deal, but now that you like have a stressful desk job, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you get the point. So, I went to see her and she was like, okay, well, let's do an exam. First of all, she had the coolest speculum. It was a clear, if there's such thing as a cool speculum, she's got one. So, usually when you go to the gynecologist, they have this like giant alien abduction light that they like shine at your nether regions, and this crank it up duckbill steel speculum that looks like a torture device from The Princess Bride. That was not what this was at all. Hers was a clear, hard plastic that the plastic itself had LED lights inside of it. So it was very light, very small, and it was its own light source. So I was like, this thing is freaking brilliant. And so because it was its own light source, she didn't have to like crank my vagina open to Kingdom Come and shine this interrogation light inside of it. It made its own light and she could see what she needed to see with it.
And also brilliant. Like those big metal ones are so cold. Like plastic doesn't get as cold as metal does.
No, and you can't see through metal. You can see through clear plastic. Right. So there's that. It was just like, where has this thing been? I mean, if you can invent a book light, you can invent a speculum like this. That's really what it reminded me of. Anyway, so looking inside was not much. She just basically wanted to see, is there an obvious growth on her cervix? Are things like horribly scarred? You can't, when you look inside a vagina, there's just not much to see. There's a pretty clear dead end, which is your cervix, and that's the end of the show. There's not much more beyond that. She did a physical exam with her hands, and she's like, okay, there's the fibroid, found that immediately. But she was like, your cervix is really pulled up high into the left. And as she felt, tried to move my organs and was feeling around my abdomen, she was like, things really don't move. And you have, it's very stuck, pulled up into the left. And so then she asked me, she's like, what's your digestion like? And I was like, I definitely tend towards constipation. So if I'm not on it, I'm not constipated regularly because I am eating 35 grams of fiber a day. I am staying well hydrated with minerals. I am very diligent about my magnesium intake. But if I don't do any one of those three things,
all those things,
constipated immediately. And sometimes even when I'm doing those things, I get constipated. And she was like, the way that your fibroid is placed, it's basically like a trap door kind of on your colon, where like your colon needs to get full to a certain extent before you can go. And that has been my experience all my life, that basically like, let's say I had like diarrhea on Sunday, I wouldn't poop on Monday. It's almost like it's always seemed like it needs to get full to a certain point before I can go again. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting that she would say that, because that is actually my lived experience. And I never thought anything about it. I just thought this was the way my colon worked. And she asked me about sex and with, penetration this way or that way, what I feel or don't feel. And I mean, to give you a crystal ball into our bedroom, certain penetration positions, I get a pain on my left hip up into the left side of my back. And it doesn't feel like, you poked my cervix. It's very local. It's like up across my side and into my back, almost like if you traced a line from the left side of my oblique up and over and into my back. And that's also where I get most of my period pain. That's where I felt all my contractions in labor. And she was like, yeah, your organs are really stuck up into the left and everything's sort of twisted and stuck. And she was like, this is endometriosis. I can just tell. I know what I'm feeling. I'm the number one, person in Southern California. I do this all day, every day. But let's do an ultrasound. Let's do an MRI. Let's look at this more clearly to see. And so I basically walked out of there with an endometriosis diagnosis, and it just made so much sense, because so much of what I'd been experiencing all my life that I've been told was irritable bowel syndrome, that I've been told was food intolerances, that I've been told was anxiety, stress tummy, that I've been told was emotional and all in my head, is actually explainable by this endometriosis. So let's take another break, and I'll explain more about what I'm talking about and what those symptoms were and what the endometriosis can do when we get back.
Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode, and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. What the heck?
Yeah, it says talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products can work if you're in that situation, or it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen. They've got hydration support. They have digestive support. They have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order. So we're back. Talk to me about the symptoms that you're discussing. And then I want to hear her idea and approach to the way she wants to treat it with you specifically.
Yeah. So, being who I am, and a lot of the road that got me here as a fertility dietitian came from so much management of my own chronic symptoms. So from when I was in middle school and got put on those birth control pills, it really helped with the painful periods, but a host of digestive issues came crashing into my life. And my parents, so my dad was self-employed. We didn't really have medical insurance. And so we would go to the doctor for big things, catastrophic things. And we did, my mom would do like a yearly well checkup. They did their diligence, but we certainly weren't going for every little thing. We were more into like alternative medicine, and the church that my parents were in, Caitlin's parents were in it too, was really a lot of like natural medicine, holistic things, looking at food and
Hippies too, right? Like
that's
they came
probably
from a
more
hippie
what it
era. It
was,
was
is
kind of
that it was a
like,
bunch of old hippies. Yeah, exactly.
right.
Yeah. And so, my mom took me to like a gastroenterologist. We did like the whole thing, and the gastroenterologist was just like, there's nothing we can do. You have irritable bowel syndrome. I think you have maybe like you shouldn't eat like these kinds of fruits or like bran, and that's all that's going on. And we can send you to like a therapist so you can learn how to manage your pain. And my mom pretty much gave him the finger and was like, she's 12. She's not 90. We're not putting her on like palliative care. This is ridiculous. And so my mom started digging into her resources, which was like one of her friends who'd worked with an herbalist, and reading nutrition books and things like that. And I started eating weird food, like really reducing carbs and increasing fiber. And it was really the first steps towards being really interested in nutrition and becoming a dietitian for me. But it taught me, that and trial and error and research and learning over the years. I thought I was gluten intolerant for a really long time. So I went gluten free, and I did have some symptom relief. And then I thought it was like a fructose sensitivity. So then I was avoiding things that were high in fructose. And so that gave me some relief. And looking back, what I was doing was reducing my amount of processed carbohydrates. I mean, if you can't eat gluten, you're not eating fast food anymore, I'll tell you that. You're not eating like muffins and cakes and rolls. You're not eating massive servings of noodles for meals. And you have to replace that with other things. And so, because you need to eat. So I was eating a higher protein diet. I was eating more fiber because I was eating fruits and vegetables in place of these processed grains. When you go on a low fructose diet, you are now pretty much eliminating anything that's been sweetened. You're not having any sodas. You're not having any processed desserts, like a lot of like ice creams, candies, like you're just not having any of those things. And there's a few high fructose fruits, that's what I'm trying to say, that I stopped eating, like apples and pears, and had more symptom relief. And now, as a 36, almost 37-year-old woman who's been working in fertility nutrition for 10 years, I see that what was going on is I was managing my blood sugar much more efficiently. I was eating fiber, and I was eating all these anti-inflammatory compounds in fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, meat, and eggs. And that was pretty much all I ate. So I had a lot of symptom relief, but over all these years, I've always been the gal that if I stay up too late studying, my belly hurts the next day. If I have too much caffeine, too much alcohol, if I let stress get a hold of me, if I'm trying to do too much and I'm going here and going there and, snacking on this and snacking on that, if I let my nutrition slip, if I let my sleep slip, if I let my fiber intake slip, if I let my hydration slip, if I get overly stressed, overly tired, I will have a period from hell, and I will have other symptoms in my body all month long, not just when I'm on my period. And I just always thought, I'm just, a weenie. I'm just sort of a sensitive gal. And I found exercise in my mid-20s, late 20s, and that was another huge game changer for me. Building muscle, working on mobility, that brought even more symptom relief, but it added another piece to the puzzle where it's like, if I'm not exercising regularly, I don't feel good. And So it just made so much sense when I got this endo diagnosis, and I actually eventually went in and did some imaging with her as well. And there weren't blatant endometriomas that she could see, but she could see that my organs are adhered to each other in ways that they shouldn't be, which is a telltale sign of endometriosis. So it made a lot of sense that all of these things over the years that I've been managing with diet and lifestyle and supplements and sometimes medications. Let's not pretend I wasn't on birth control pills or NuvaRings or what the hell else did I try? IUD. God, I've done it all over the years. That it really, I've done a lot of things. I've been trying to manage this all my life without realizing. It's like I've been fighting a battle all my life without ever really seeing the
With the
opponent.
wrong
And
thing.
yeah, and now I
Yeah.
understand what I'm actually up against.
And I think a huge piece of the puzzle too is having not just that clinical experience and exposure to people with the syndrome, but like having the right practitioner looking at you, because a lot of people with endometriosis don't get diagnosed for many years because they don't have the right practitioner that's skilled, because they go do the imaging and they don't see blatant endometriomas.
Mm-hmm.
And a thorough endometriosis diagnosis usually comes during surgery because it isn't something that's so
Exactly.
easy to see. And what
Mm-hmm.
you have is a practitioner that's in it day in and day out, that she kind of sees the fingerprints of it. And so it's much
Exactly.
easier for her to go, those two organs are adhered in a way, plus the symptom that you're saying and the position of sex that you're in. And when Sophia first described this appointment with this practitioner to me, you said, these are your words, it's like she had a crystal ball into all these
Totally.
areas of my life.
100%. Yeah,
Right?
I felt like I was at like a fortune teller in a not creepy demonic way. It was like because the questions she asked were just like, do you feel pain when your husband inserts his penis this way? And I'm like, yeah. How'd you know? And I just thought, he's got a big dong. I don't know.
Yeah. But
Like,
like you also went to a pelvic floor physical therapist. Like it's not like you've just been like, okay, this is life. Like you've
no,
sought out help at different
definitely.
steps. And I mean, you are the classic tale. You even had somebody looking at your uterus before, Natalie, to see why is it difficult getting pregnant. And there
I
were other
did.
things to address that helped you get pregnant, but this was missed there. So you, on one hand, I want to be like, hurrah, hurrah. But on the other hand, I'm kind of pissed because
I know.
you've seen enough practitioners that it shouldn't be this hard. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to go to the number one specialist in a geographical region to get the right care. And that's why this podcast episode is really important, because somebody's going to listen to this and go, hey, me too. I have unexplained this kind of pain. I have these constipation issues. I mean, when I think about IBS,
Mm-hmm.
predominantly the population that gets it is women. It's like very
Ding ding.
lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we talking about IBS, or are we talking about women that also have endometrial issues? Women that also have, there are other things that this could be. I was on with a client this morning who has PCOS and an IBS diagnosis. It's like, how many people are really pulling back the curtains and asking the right questions?
Yeah.
So I want to celebrate, and I love that this is a step in the right direction and you have somebody that actually knows how to treat you and is going to. But on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, I want to obviate the like elephant in the room that shouldn't have taken this long.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shouldn't take somebody who's studied this. The patient shouldn't have to be the one who's studied this and knows everything and goes in, already connected the dots in order to get the diagnosis. I can see why it takes a long time to get a diagnosis. And the doctor said the same thing to me. She's like, we can fast track this for you. Spoiler alert here, I am getting surgery in like 2 weeks for this problem. And that's the gold standard of care. I have managed it really well with diet and lifestyle, but the fibroid needs treatment. And since she's doing that, she's also going to treat the endometriosis, because why the hell not? And endometriosis isn't just a problem getting pregnant. It's not just a problem with digestion. You can have a total hysterectomy and still have problems with endometriosis because there are adhesions and endometriomas on your other organs. So this needs to get treated, period, point blank, the end. Like, I need this treatment. And so whether or not I want to have another baby ever, I need to have this treatment. And I do want to have another baby, but this needs to happen first. So I am gonna go get this treatment. But for most of the time, she kind of has to slow pedal it, because she has to be like, okay, whoa, I'm not just going to throw you on my surgery calendar and like get you next week, because if this isn't well managed after surgery, it can come back. Just like throwing somebody on a medication, or even doing like an ovarian wedge resection with PCOS. That can really be a game changer for people and can absolutely transform your life. But if you continue on with all your same lifestyle habits, it's not, you're going to be in the same place you're at
Going to change
in a few years. And so that's really, you know, what she wanted to talk to me about with endometriosis. But she was like, you're ready for this.
You're the gold standard patient, right?
Exactly. Like, because she's like, half the people come in here and they're like, endometrio what now? And she has to be like, okay, let's take this a few steps back and actually educate you and help you, and you know, not just go in there scalpels blazing. So she was that, and the fact that my husband's getting out of the Navy in a couple weeks. So I was like, I really want to get this surgery done before he gets out of the Navy. So we did sort of fast track this, and I had all the appointments. I did all the things. All that's left now is for me to go to my pre-op, where they talk to me about like what to expect, how to take care of myself afterwards, and then get all my medications and what all, and then actually have the surgery.
So talk to me about the decision, because I know that there was one, between how to treat the fibroid in this surgery that she's doing.
Great question. So we had to first figure out how big the fibroid was, because remember last time we looked at it, it was a big one. It was a big birth of fibroid. And she was like, if we do a myomectomy, I am not going to advocate for you to have a vaginal birth. So you got to decide what you want to do, because I've seen terrible things happen and lives lost, and I don't want to be a part of that. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. You know, my choice. Wasn't going to ask you to attend my birth anyway. Jeez. She doesn't even go here. Like, that's kind of how I felt when she said that. But so we did some imaging. Lo and behold, go tell it on the mountains. The fibroid was only 3.5 centimeters, which is like a little bitty plum. Not even quite a clementine fruit. It's just a little bitty. So I am a candidate for what is called an embolization, which is where robotically she will go into my abdomen and she will strategically, she's more of a vascular surgeon than she is a gynecologic surgeon, and that's really what it takes to treat endometriosis and fibroids. I digress. So she goes in and she actually treats the blood vessels supplying the fibroid, while leaving the ones that are like leaving the veins, which take the blood away, but cutting off the ones that bring blood to the fibroid, so that it will just sort of shrink away and die on its own. So she will not be cutting into the muscle of my uterus. She will not be sewing up a giant hole. She will just be basically cutting off the blood supply to this fibroid, so it has no more resources to grow and hopefully fades away. And while she's in there, she is going to do an endometriosis excision surgery robotically, where she will search throughout my entire abdominal cavity from diaphragm to rectum for endometriomas, which are sort of like the tissue that grows inside of your uterus when you're getting ready for ovulation, and it's what like comes out when you have your period. Um, but it's not where it needs to be. It is grown outside the uterus, and it's not exactly the same tissue as you would find inside your uterus. It's similar. And because in your uterus, you have a very efficient system of growth and removal, growth and removal. You don't have that on your diaphragm, on your colon, on your iliosacral ligaments, on your small
Different
intestines.
organs, different functions. They don't do that.
Exactly. And what can happen is cycle after cycle, month after month, year after year, the hormone cycles that women have where these tissues are built up by all of your estrogen and your luteinizing hormone and your progesterone, and then are shed away once those hormones drop and you get ready for your period, is when they're growing and shrinking, they can get very, very sticky. And that therein lies the issue a lot of times with endometriosis, which is the organs begin to stick to each other, and your intestines need to be able to move. Everything inside your body needs to be able to move. It's these very delicate, nuanced movements that allow you to digest and poop and breathe and eat and move and all the things. And when stuff is stuck together, it can't move the way it needs to anymore. So she's going to sort of unstick and get everything gliding again and help to minimize adhesions, because when you cut into a tissue, just like if you fall asleep, you got to cut on your hand and the band-aid heals to the hand, you got to pull it off. Kind of similar thing can happen after surgery. So she really helps everything stay all loosey-goosey afterwards so that you don't get more adhesions post-surgically. And so she's going to be treating the fibroid with the embolization, and she's going to be treating the endometriosis with excision.
So amazing. So talk to me about what you know, if you know this ahead of time. And if you don't, maybe this is in your pre-op appointment, but what are their recommendations for post-surgery recovery?
I haven't talked in detail about that yet. All I know is what I've, learned from other patients of hers and the Facebook group and the Reddit threads, do what you will with those. And just, I've had dozens and dozens and dozens of patients, maybe up into the hundreds at this point, who have been through something similar to this. What you do post-surgically is you kind of lay around. It's a lot of rest, especially immediately. So it's about 2 weeks of bed rest or modified bed rest. You can get up and walk, and you can do gentle movements. Walking and gentle movements can actually be helpful, but you really need to rest the area and take care to let things heal appropriately and not be up and moving and getting crazy. So it's a lot of rest immediately post-surgically, and then you kind of move on to a healthy endo-free life after that.
Is there a particular time in your cycle that she tries to schedule surgery?
No. Nope. In fact,
What
my
would
surgery is
you
scheduled to start on the
recommend?
first day of my period but that was just happenstance.
What would you recommend to somebody going into a surgery like this in terms of nutritional interventions? Like, what do you plan to employ beforehand, maybe in preparation and after surgery to help your body heal?
Great question. So there is going to be blood loss. So I want to make sure that I am keeping my minerals high, that I am working good hydration, that I am eating lots of protein, because your blood is high protein, and making sure that all is well there. I'm prepping my freezer with a lot of broths and soups and stews and meat so that I can stay high protein after the surgery. And it really is still going to be a lifelong taking care of myself process. I mean, endometriosis is a chronic disease. This isn't a cure. I will
Go away.
always have endometriosis. That's just how this works, just like you will always have PCOS unless we find the magic cure. I don't want to say it like that, like it's some far-fetched bullshit, because it is not. And maybe there will be a cure, and God, I hope there is someday. But at this juncture, doesn't really seem likely within our lifetime. So, really, it's still going to be the same lifestyle management. I'm not going to walk out of the surgery somebody that can drink 4 cocktails and stay up till 3 a.m. and then have a coffee the size of my head the next day and feel good. That's never going to be me. And I'm never going to be the gal that can skip meals and eat junk and just be fine. I'm never going to have the cast iron stomach. I'm never going to be unscathed by stress and hormonal fluctuations. I am going to need to heal continually by managing my blood sugar, managing my stress, managing my toxic load, getting quality sleep, moving my body. Strength training has been an absolute wonder for me when it comes to my health and my periods and my fertility. And I recommend it to literally everyone. So I'm still going to have to do all those things. This isn't going to be like a free pass to go do whatever I want at all times. Lord knows, I would love to drink coffee all day and wine all night, every day. I would love to eat desserts and pasta for every meal. 100%. Who doesn't want that life? I want a ham and cheese croissant for breakfast every single day. But that is not going to make me well. I can't do that. So I gotta come up with other ways. And I gotta manage all these things. And that's going to continue to be the case well after this surgery.
So well said. Let's take our last break and hear from our final sponsor, and then let's come back and celebrate some things. And any last thoughts you want to share about kind of what this has brought to the surface for you, or you're just like emotionally, I'd love to hear how you've responded to this. Not just the idea of like having a diagnosis and a path forward, but like going into surgery and the prospect of maybe having more children and being able to birth them in the way that you want to because of how this has played out. Like, I think there's a lot here that you've been able to reflect on over time. I'd love to hear a sentence or two on what that's felt like. So here's our final sponsor.
Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, I want to have a baby. And the doctor looks at you and says, good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant. And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
We're back. So any thoughts or reflections on just like the emotional side of this journey for you?
It was definitely validating and sort of relieving and fascinating to get this diagnosis. Like, I now that I see all these like endo warrior hashtags, I'm like, I belong. Yay, I'm an endo warrior now too. Maybe not a club that you like want to be in, but it's cool that there's already something sort of established out there. it has brought intense gratitude and validation to my life because I have had 2 healthy babies with a history of ovarian cysts, with a history of endometritis, with a history of polyps, with a history of low progesterone and borderline hypothalamic amenorrhea, with rampant estrogen dominance. I have lived my life and I'm a mom with 2 healthy children with endometriosis. This can happen for people. And it was so much like, look at me, I freaking managed this with diet and lifestyle for the past 25 years. High five to Sophia. That is pretty freaking awesome. And not everyone's endometriosis can be managed that way. And so if you're like feeling down about yourself because you've needed pain pills or whatever, that's not what this is about. This isn't putting you down. This is high five and Sophia. So I am really proud of myself for that. It definitely brings up some fear. I really want another baby. And the fact that there's a very obvious thing standing between me and that is intimidating and difficult and scary. The fact that I have to go under general anesthesia for 3 to 4 hours while she digs around in my guts. The fact that I have an opiate allergy. I cannot take prescription pain pills. And I'm going to have to come out of a major surgery and manage my pain without prescription pain medication. That's challenging. I've had minor surgery in the past, and on that I had a surgery on my wrist. I had sinus surgery, and I had to manage it without pain pills, and it wasn't fun. And this is even more than that. So I am a bit afraid of the pain, and I'm hopeful. I am anxious. I want it to get done. I want to just be past this. And I am ready. That's how I feel. All those things.
It's also interesting because you're also living real life. Like, this isn't happening in a vacuum. Like,
No.
we were together 2 weeks ago, started a week that we were together. So we've been basically not hanging out for the last week. A week ago today, we left each other in Colorado, went our separate ways. And about a week and a half before we got together, I got a phone call that was like, hey, I gotta talk something through with you. Just had this great appointment. It was wonderful. I need surgery. She has an appointment that would make it so that we can't go to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And what would that look like? Would you be bummed? Can we get out of our reservation? Also, wisdom, thoughts from a friend. Should I just put it off? It meant maybe your husband staying in the military an extra couple weeks. It didn't happen on its own.
No.
There's also other things going on behind the scenes in your life that maybe we're not going to talk about today, but
yeah, I have a high needs
major
family.
Stressors,
not my immediate
emotional.
Family. Well, I have a high needs immediate family. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and a combat injured veteran husband. So it's not an easy.
He's about to get out of the military after 13-ish years, right?
Yeah. It's definitely, a lot, and I am an integral, as my husband is wonderful and he is a star around the house, but I am still the main character.
Your mom.
He's the best support. I'm mom.
Yeah.
And so for me to be unable to lift I won't be able to pick up my kids for 2 weeks. And that's really hard with a 1-year-old. I mean, she will fall down off something and I'll have to stand there while she cries.
She still
on the
nurses.
ground. She still breastfeeds. Yeah. Exactly. There's a lot there that makes this challenging. And then recovery, I'm not going to be able to try to conceive for 6 months after this surgery. And that's not true with all endometriosis excisions. That's more the fibroid that's causing that. most endo excision surgeries, you maybe need to wait 2 to 3 cycles, where she wants me waiting 6. So it's definitely something that is a huge impact in my life. And yeah, it's not happening in a vacuum. I'm right in the middle of my proluteal lab. So I have group coaching clients that are depending on me each week. It's not convenient timing for me, but when is chronic illness ever convenient? When has your PCOS been convenient, Caitlin? Never.
Right. That's kind of my point, is like, this is life. And
Yeah.
it's, getting an answer and having surgery sounds really glamorous, probably to a lot of listeners right now that are like, I wish I knew I couldn't get pregnant. I wish I, but there are struggles that come with the highs and lows of life, and the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. Like, there's just life that's happening. And my encouragement to you as a friend and to our listeners is that, like, I don't know, Anna had it right. Like, you do the next right thing. You do your best to prepare. Sophia is not sitting on her hands the next few weeks. She's making soups and stews that are going in her freezer. She also, like, I'm not in a position I can just hop on a plane and go take care of her family for a week. But she has people around her that will rally. She has a great nanny that we talked about earlier. She's going to come over and help more. There will be people like me that can't be there physically that will send her a meal. And I'm just trying to obviate that, like, community can be community around you, but you have to let people in because infertility isn't happening in a vacuum. You still have a job. You still have family obligations. You still have a lot of things going on. And sometimes what you really do need is to let a few people in and let them love on you and support you as you process these things, as you make decisions about surgeries, as you have the surgeries, as you need extra support through those things. And that's not a sign of weakness at all.
No, and you don't get the help you want, you get the help you get. And so you don't get to, whoever comes over to help you isn't necessarily going to load your dishwasher the way that you want it to be loaded. Whoever brings you a meal isn't necessarily going to season it the exact way that you like. Whoever takes your kids for the afternoon may not play with them the way that you want, may put them in front of a show, may, whatever. You get the help you get, not just the help that you want in exactly the way that you want it. And that's going to be the way that it is for me as I'm recovering here as well.
Part 2, we're definitely going to get to my health update and
Weight
health
loss
journey. We'll do that
episode.
You can hear that next week. But before we sign off today, we got to do a yeah girl.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah girl.
My yeah girl is that I get to go do something so fun after this. So I have been on my butt. I had wrist surgery and then I was in Colorado. And as soon as I got back, I got sick. If you can't hear that, I still sort of have a little scrounge in my voice. And so I have been out of the gym for weeks. And after this, we're going to go do family workout, which is my favorite thing. We go to my husband's work where they have this big outdoor turf. And my kids like play and ride bikes and scooters, and we'll do like running drills down the turf, and they'll ride their bike next to us, and they like to work out alongside us. And it's just so fun to get outside as a family. And so we're going to go do that immediately after this episode. And like I said, lifting and exercise has been so integral to my endometriosis management, and I'm so happy to be going and doing that again.
I love that. I have like so many I'm trying to decide which yeah girl I want to do. But I think I'm going to do this one. When we were in Colorado, one of the nights, Sophia made this delicious, so good, so delicious Greek chicken tray bake. And I don't want to be like, oh, it was so easy, but it was like one of those meals that like you want to do regularly because it tastes great and it's not super hard.
Yeah.
Right. It just tasted delicious. So I meal planned this week, and that's what we're doing for dinner tonight. And I'm so excited to make it and try it.
Did you
And
use the spice blend
this
recipe I sent you?
I have the recipe out. I haven't made the blend yet. It's all happening today. That's
I've
what's
been
for
waiting
dinner
for you
tonight.
to look at it
I
because
just
it has
can't wait.
dill, and you hate dill. And I didn't tell you the other day
I
when
do
you're like,
hate
"This
dill.
is good." I'm like, "Yeah, you're eating dill, baby."
I know. I don't mind like a little bit of dill. I don't like put a forest of dill in the
A
pickles,
dill
and the
forward
pickles only
meal.
taste
Yeah,
like dill.
exactly. It's a nice supporting player. You want it to be maybe a note in the symphony. You don't want a song about dill.
Yeah, fuck dill. Excuse me, all our super, super Christian listeners, but it's not my favorite herb, okay? It's not, but it's in the recipe. I will use it tonight
Oh yeah.
when I make it, and I'm so excited. But I also want to say a small girl, in that my niece is in town visiting, and we just have like so many fun things planned for the next few days that involve getting outside. And it's like starting to be summer here, but not so hot, that I'm just like, I'm excited for the next
Sweet
week.
spot
That, like,
season.
we're going to a really fun zoo we never go to, and it's just gonna be a great week. And we're celebrating my daughter's birthday tomorrow, which is gonna be so fun. She's turning 5. I can't believe it. And just generally, girl happy over here. Gonna be
I'm loving
eating
it.
Greek
Yeah,
tray bake.
girl.
And maybe because I love food photography now, maybe I'll take a picture of it. You know, anything could happen.
Yeah, girl, do it. Do it. All right.
Okay.
Well, listener, thank
It's
you for
another
tuning
episode.
in. Make sure that you continue listening for part 2, which we're about to record, where we learn all about sustainable weight loss and Caitlin's health and weight loss journey / sort of mine, because I've just been piggybacking off of her in every way. So thank you for listening. Remember to review, rate, subscribe, share. It helps other ladies who are struggling to find us. You can find both Caitlin and I on Instagram and our websites. All of our sponsors are linked in the show notes. And we are looking forward to seeing you in our next episode about weight loss.
Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.